If there's a haunted house, would you dare to live in it? This man just got off the train. It was too late. He had to accept the house introduced by the agent. Although the house looked old, he thought he would leave in 2 months. And the agent's service attitude was good. He didn't pay much attention. But as soon as he sent the man into, the 中介 closed the door. The agent smiled evilly. Although those old people said the room was haunted, but as a modern young man, he naturally didn't believe it. Looking at the dark corridor, he cursed them as superstitious. How could there be such a thing in this world? But he didn't know that. There were hands slowly reaching out to him. Meanwhile, the tenant in the room was also experiencing terrifying things. In the dark, a ghost is quietly approaching. The time soon came to the next day. The black agent was punched awake. Standing in front of him, it was Wrong Grandma and a police officer investigating the case. Last night, he was pushed downstairs and passed out. The tenant also died of a heart attack last night. But there was no surveillance in this dilapidated building. Granny Long looked gloomy and asked him why he rented out the haunted house. Now he has killed the tenant. The originally unconvinced agent listened to this. He broke out in a cold sweat. The building was surrounded by onlookers. And outside the crowd stood a man. His name is Tanka, is a member of the Demon City Temple, and is responsible for investigating this strange murder. But he couldn't sense the demonic power or aura. It seems that this mission is quite difficult. At this time, he made a hand seal and opened the elf eye. This is a pupil technique of the secret recipe of Tao. It has extremely strong reconnaissance and auxiliary abilities. It can observe the color of surrounding souls. Blue represents ordinary humans. White represents the dead humans. Yellow represents the protagonist and his kind. Red represents the demon's spirit. At this time, his left eye glowed. Under the operation of the red tree, the whole building actually appeared in a transparent. But after scanning, he didn't find the target. But the more difficult things are, the more interested he is. But at this moment, a voice called him. He turned around. It was a little fat man with a runny nose. The little fat man inferred that Tanka was a Naruto fan, and proudly told him that he was one too. Then he stretched out his palm to demonstrate. Then he used water-styled big waterfall. Then he looked proudly at the side, but Tanka was gone. And his lollipop also disappeared. At this moment, Tanka was sitting on the rooftop behind. He sneered. I just played with the little fool. What I just used was not called ninjutsu. It was Taoism. Then he thought of this mission. I didn't expect the target to be so well hidden. He needs to go back and think about how to capture him. After finding him, I will definitely beat him up. This beauty actually rents a haunted house to live stream. Even though she was told that a murder had happened yesterday, she wasn't afraid. The agent handed her the key helplessly, but he didn't rush up. The beauty was eating instant noodles in the room. An evil hand quietly stretched out from under the table and then grabbed her leg. But the beauty suddenly stood up. She remembered that her idol hadn't been pasted yet. Not only on the door, but also on the window, she pasted one to ward off evil. The light on the ceiling flashed a few times and went out. And there was a creaking sound from the cabinet next to it. The beauty seemed very scared, but she mustered up the courage to step forward and shout, "Let the person inside come out." At this time, the cabinet door shook and opened a gap. A terrifying face gradually emerged. "So you are here?" The beauty suddenly changed her face. She quickly stepped forward, grabbed the door, and opened it hard. Then she unzipped the zipper. A rooster with red eyes flew out of the bag. This rooster is called Wao, which can make any spirit appear. Wao knew it was time for him to appear. It flapped its wings and flew towards the cabinet. The beauty slammed the door hard. Then, there were constant impacts and screams inside. The cabinet door finally couldn't bear it and broke open. Wao flew out and was put into the backpack. Then, a dry and hideous ghost crawled out from inside. Then it came to the beauty, roaring angrily, "I want to eat you," and then opened its mouth wide, a bloody mouth, and was about to bite her. With dense fangs in its mouth, which looked terrifying. However, the next second, he was punched and flew out, and fell heavily to the ground. Now it was the ghost's turn to be afraid. He asked nervously who he was. The beauty sneered at this moment, and drew an aperture in the air, and the disguise on her body slowly faded away. "I am Juling, the ghost of Sangshi, Silk Road, Yaocheng, the performance champion." Tanka's eyes flashed with fear. He didn't expect that she was from the Demon City division. Tanka didn't take him seriously. The ghost's hidden ability is indeed more powerful than ordinary ones, but in terms of strength, he can handle it with one finger. The ghost was now scared and wanted to hide and escape, but was interrupted by the ability of the four-clawed black chicken and several wounds on his body, and then tried to escape through the door. However, as soon as it touched the seal on the door, Fulu behind him burst into dazzling golden light and was then electrocuted and charred, revealing his true form. Tanka didn't expect this ghost to be so weak, and he didn't even have to use his hands, and its original form turned out to be just a short and chubby little ghost. Seeing him trembling with fear, Tanka stuck out his middle finger and gave him a headbutt. The little spirit looked pitiful, saying he couldn't leave and needed to wait for someone here. Then he recounted his experience. Originally, he lived in ancient times. He was naturally cowardly. The only thing he was good at was stealth. Because of this, he was enlisted by the Demon City Temple. Then the cooperation was exposed to a trap. All died. Only he survived. But he was also seriously injured. He hid in this cabinet and fell asleep. When he woke up, he found himself in modern times. Later, an old blind woman found him, and they lived together and treated him well. But one day, the old lady fell asleep on the ground and couldn't be woken up. Then a few people came and carried her away. So the little fairy wanted to wait here, waiting for the old lady to wake up and come back. Hearing this, Tanka basically understood what happened and realized that the old lady had died. Then he couldn't stand his nagging and interrupted him. Then he opened the software of Yao Chen Si and scanned his information. It shows the target result. The Tanwang belongs to an extinct species. The extinction time was in the northern frontier. The reason for extinction is demon spirit hunting. After reading it, he looked at the little demon playfully and said, "Although this dirty work is not much, but it's quite interesting to catch you and the extinct demon spirit. is very valuable in the black market. Hearing the black market, the little demon immediately imagined a terrifying scene and cried and struggled. Seeing this, Tanka stopped joking and kicked him up, explaining that he wouldn't sell him, and the old lady wouldn't come back. You don't have to be lonely, scared, and helpless anymore, because I will protect you. I'll name you Shaohuai now. Shouyo listened, and someone was willing to accept her, and moved tears welled up in her eyes. Then he nodded seriously to agree. Then Tanka took out his sleeve and put Shaohuai inside. With a shout, Shaohui was sucked into the sleeve. He thought Tanka was deliberately deceiving him and trapped him. He shouted that humans are all liars, but Tanka didn't explain. He took out his phone and looked at the task submission interface and clicked on failure and hid Xiaohei's whereabouts. Meanwhile, on a busy construction site, several workers were discussing, saying they had dug up an antique, but it looked like a jar, estimated to weigh several hundred caddies. 2 thick ropes were wrapped around it. They were curious, saying it looked like their broken wine jar. And some said it was a pickle jar. Then a man named Lao Zhuang stepped forward. Why are you guessing? Just open it and you'll know. Then he approached. He saw that the lid was covered with densely packed runes. What's written here? It looks like dog crawling. Lao Zhuang couldn't understand it either. He lifted the lid. When the lid fell to the ground, the runes slowly disappeared into the air. After a long time, Lao Zhuang didn't respond. Several people behind shouted and wanted to check. But they didn't know that Lao Zhuang was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His whole body was like a mummy. The vital energy was flowing towards the strange giant altar below. In the rain, a girl was riding a bike and running on the road. She finally got a big order, but she was going to be late. At this time, she accelerated the throttle again. Fortunately, there weren't many people on the road. At this speed, she can definitely catch up. But at this moment, what she had hit, the girl was thrown out and fell heavily to the ground. She didn't understand why she hit something, but there was nothing in front of him. As the rain got heavier, in the middle of the road, a hideous monster slowly emerged in the middle of the road. This girl's name is Zhuang Xiaoran. Just this morning, she just had a falling out with her relatives. Her mother abandoned them when she was a child. And her father also passed away, which forced him to live with his relatives. She wants to save money to find her so-called mother and make her regret abandoning him. But now she has only saved half. As long as she works harder, she should be able to achieve it soon. His aunt knocked on the door early in the morning, saying she wouldn't get up in the morning and come back late at night. She can't help and eat and drink for free. She's shameless, but she has to live under her aunt's roof, so she had to bow her head. Joran couldn't argue anything, so she could only ask her aunt if there was a place to live. If there's a place to live. The woman in the living room was still complaining. She said she would only stay for a few days, but now she has been living for almost half a year. But the man didn't think it mattered. After all, she is his own niece. I don't care who cares about her. Since words couldn't convince her, so she went to work angrily. And after the aunt left, Xiaoran was relieved. She went to the bathroom to wash up. However, while she was washing her face, the door behind her opened a crack. The man looked at Zhuang Zhaoran's body and showed an ambiguous smile. And Zhaoran, who was washing her face, suddenly felt someone behind. She turned around. Her uncle had come behind her at some point. He explained that he came in to get some floss. Zhaoran still felt very strange. Even if this is her home, he couldn't be so casual. The man used the excuse of getting floss, suddenly approached Zhaoran's body.